Welcome to Let's Talk Humanitarian, Parlons Humanitaire, enriching conversations with humanitarian leaders and humanitarian workers to open eyes, heart, and mind. This is a program by KALU Institute, your online center for humanitarian aid studies where humanitarians train humanitarians. My name is Amelie Yan-Gouiffes, and I'm really delighted to be the host for this conversation with Janthomas Hiemstra, the head of country support management team for UNDP Crisis Bureau in New York. Hi, Janthomas.
Hey, how are you doing, Amelie?
Good. Thank you so much for accepting to be here with us today in this conversation. Let me introduce you a little. You have such a vast experience, more than 25 years. Being a development advocate, a practitioner, and manager for the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. You have served in a series of duty stations, among which Palestine, Bosnia, Iraq, Nigeria, Syria, Ukraine, and Yemen. You are an expert in traditional UNDP areas of governance and environment, also in conflict programming and post-conflict transition. You like to focus on resilience and early recovery and positioning UNDP during and immediately after humanitarian crisis. You designed and rolled out UNDP's global systems and procedures for immediate crisis response. And we will really want to know more about that during our interview. As a development communicator, you're very active on social media, notably Facebook and Twitter. So we'll leave the details of your Twitter address in the comments. You have your own podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is in development.
Okay.
It's not as rich as I want it to be because podcasting is a very labor-intensive exercise, as you probably know. So I don't get to it as much as I want, but I love it.
Okay, and you also facilitate a daily webinar on COVID-19, which I understand is an exercise you started at the beginning of the crisis for UNDP staff.
Yeah, I found that in the beginning of the crisis, when we were all forced to go on Zoom and on sitting at your laptop all day, I missed the community of UNDP. Everybody did, but rather than sitting back and say what can I do, when can I go to the office? Actually, I decided to bring people around in a webinar every morning, 8 o'clock Brooklyn time, as I said, and we were just going through some simple subjects, bringing people together, having a quick chat over a coffee, and then half an hour, not more than that. So it wasn't very time consuming, but we did some 150 of them. And actually, they were a big success because people were actually tuning to it every day, like you tune for the radio or something. You turn it off when you don't like it, but you hang in when you do, and you contribute when you want. Very easygoing type of webinars, not too complicated, not too deep, but just to connect people and to keep having the impression that we're this global organization, right? Even if we are hit by a virus. Over.
Wow, thank you. Really interesting how you can build community through this technology that we react so much against sometimes. So you are from the Netherlands originally, yeah, and now you work for UNDP Crisis Bureau in New York. And for some of our audience, hearing UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, and Crisis Bureau may be almost surprising. So can you explain us what is the role of a Crisis Bureau and the role of UNDP in crisis?
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned it already when you did my bio. I mean, we're convinced in UNDP as a development organization that development and the foundations of development are actually have to start already in crisis and in humanitarian type of situations. We don't want to do humanitarian work for too long, right? Only as long as it's necessary, saving lives, getting people back in business. But after that, development takes over, right? So as UNDP, we are convinced that we need to be there early on. That's why you find very sizable UNDP programs in Yemen, in Lebanon, in what we call typically humanitarian places. You'll find UNDP doing early recovery or nexus type of work, as we say. Try to contribute to the humanitarian phase lasting as short as needed, right? So that a country can start thinking about itself, putting itself back together, rather than be dependent on import of food, or distribution of water, and all those things. However good they are, we don't want that to last forever, right?
So it's really much supporting people, countries, and institutions to get back on their feet. No.
Yes, I mean, one signature program of ours is Cash for Work, for example. I mean, rather than giving stuff to people, which again, I love it, because we are in business to help people, right? So when they need water, we need to give them water.
Yeah.
But the moment it is possible, we prefer to give them some job, right? Even if it's to clean a street, or to cook something, or to make something, so that they can have an income and have their own dignity back. Because holding up your hand for food and oil and water is not dignified for people, right? It's not a life. So that is what UNDP wants to work on from the very beginning, but all the way into the development phase.
Thank you very much for this this very visual explanation of what is the role of UNDP in crisis. And so you are the head of the country support management team. So what is this team about? Can you tell us a little about its role?
Basically, I have 30 people working here that are particularly looking whether our country offices. We have a country office in 140 countries, in every single humanitarian country office in the world as well, that our country offices in crisis get what they need from their headquarters. So we have money for them, we do have people for them, we have technical advice for them, they can also get consultants from our side. So I'm running all those facilities that directly support our country offices in crisis countries. And for that, I have a small team here in New York, but actually since COVID also, they're all over the place. I have people in Germany, in Bangkok, in Afghanistan. So, I mean, we are everywhere actually.
Okay, thank you. And I understand one of these tools that you have available, or facilities, like you mentioned, is the ExpRes Roster, right?
I mean, the ExpRes Roster is one of those elements. I mean, an organization like UNDP is quite large, so we have a lot of staff. So one of the rosters I'm running is for UNDP people to go from here to there, right? If we have a specific expertise in one country, whether it's programmatic or operational, and another country needs it, I have the mechanisms to bring people in the right place at the right time. But very often, even though we're a big organization, we depend a lot on the next layer of expertise, which is very often consultants. Right? People who are not immediately associated with UNDP, but are ready to work in UNDP. And so it was 10, 12 years ago that we set up this ExpRes Roster that is meant to alleviate this pressure that is there on UNDP staff. Particularly when big crisis happens, you know, we need additional people, like 20 or 30 or 40 sometimes, and that you cannot bring that just from any other country, because these people are UNDP people have a job to do. But if we can find consultants who have the time to go there, I mean, that is our next resort. So we have the ExpRes Roster. There is currently 6,000 people on it. From there, we can bring the right expertise to our country offices also at the right time. Because some of these mechanisms that we're having, once you're on the roster, for example, in UNDP, I've seen people deployed in 2 days. We do the terms of reference today, we give you the contract tomorrow, and tomorrow afternoon you're on the plane.
Wow. So for this ExpRes Roster, I understand it's open to people who are not then UNDP. It's these people outside. Actually, I'm part of this ExpRes Roster.
Yeah,
so
like
yes,
you.
it's
you are on the
and
roster.
I really enjoy it. And here the idea is to interview you, because KALU Institute is has a master on humanitarian aid and international cooperation, and we have thousands of students, and many would be maybe great expertise to add on to the roster, and they will definitely be very interested in knowing more of about the roster. So who can apply to the roster, and how do we do it?
Well, everybody in principle can apply. I mean, but of course, in those areas where UNDP is active. I understand that most of your KALU Institute clients and students are humanitarians. I mean, what I'm picturing, of course, is not pure humanitarian work, right? We do not distribute water. We do not do a lot of logistics. We don't fly in airplanes full of food. There, that's humanitarian, right? But livelihood experts, early rule of law, supporting traditional systems of coping of people, a lot of capacities that are very close to humanitarian, but not quite. But I'm sure among your students there are a ton of people that could actually apply. So you can actually go to a website of ours. I mean, the best way to put it, you go to Twitter, ExpRes Roster,
Yes.
our Twitter account. There you find a hyperlink to the place where you can apply. And when you apply, you actually see the whole list of capabilities that we're looking for. You tick the ones that you are good at, and then you hang on your CV, and then you will be vetted by our technical teams. And then within a couple of days or weeks, you are on the roster. And from the moment you're on the roster, we also agree with you on your daily rate and those kind of things. Everything is pre-agreed, so that by the time we need you, we call you. You say, I'm available, not available. We do our quick TOR and you're ready to go. So the roster is a way for us to be much quicker. We don't have to advertise again. We don't have to make a long selection, short list and long list. We don't do interviews at that moment in time because we already get that done when you are, when you're enrolling on the roster.
And you were mentioning this roster is like 10 years old?
Roughly 10, 12 years old. Actually,
10, 12 years old.
I was lucky to be also among the initiators of the roster because I was working in the crisis bureau in another capacity also 12 years ago. So it's one baby that I picked up again after 10 years, and we're bringing it to next levels, honestly. It is becoming really big. Just to indicate you, the first 100 days of this year until now, we deployed 300 people from the roster.
And that's huge, and like you mentioned, no, sometimes we believe that in the United Nations the things are slow and it's difficult, and like you mentioned, all the way this roster is thought is to enable a really quick deployment, and I've experienced it. So you can immediately just go once the country agrees on your profile, and it's clear that you are available and that you're the right fit for the emergency. So you were mentioning the next level. What is the next level for you of the roster?
Well, there's a few things. I mean, we have now, because of the success and speed of the roster, it is actually not confined to crisis type of work only. We have now opened it up to all work that UNDP is doing. So also governance experts, environmental experts, modeling experts. I mean, it's basically the entire breadth of a development organization. All those profiles we're sourcing now. So we have gone way beyond the crisis level. Second thing we have done is that we have also really tightened up contractual processes. I actually have a team working for me now directly that can actually sign those contracts overnight. Because, in some situations, of course, particularly crisis situations, I mean, every hour counts, every day counts. Yeah. Maybe not in terms of, not in terms of people dying, because UNDP is not a humanitarian agency, but for the development perspective to be brought into the picture, there is really no time to lose. And there is no reason why it should take 3 weeks for people to finally get to a place where they really need it after an earthquake, or a hurricane, but also in some conflict type of situation. So I've tightened up the contractual procedures also, so that, I mean, easily, I'm not exaggerating, 2 days is enough for us to fly you to somewhere if that is needed.
And are there specific competencies that you find difficult to have on the roster? Can you share with us so that maybe some of the people who are listening to us say, hey, that's what I have?
Well, there are types of expertise that we find difficult to find. I mean, in the first place, there's language. I mean, UNDP globally tends to be English oriented. So the more into niche languages we go, I mean, already French is a bit more difficult, but Arabic, Portuguese. I mean, we were going on search missions to Mozambique recently, where Portuguese is actually, you don't do anything without Portuguese. So finding Portuguese-speaking people was a challenge. Of course, it can never be as rich as finding English-speaking people, but we need to have a certain core of people in every language. Arabic, very important for us. So anybody speaking one or more of those languages, we're always very happy to enroll you. Then there are also particular profiles. I mean, recently, let's say, we are a lot involved we're having big plans for stabilization in the Sahel particularly. And that's where there is a profile called civil military cooperation, you know, where the people that are talk to the military and that strategize with military people, talk their language. The people who have that background, actually, I mean, if you have worked in some defense setup and you are knowledgeable, those kind of profiles are very high in demand because we don't have a whole lot of them in UNDP. So yes, if you follow our Twitter handle on the ExpRes Roster, that's also where we drop those particularly difficult vacancies. So that's where you can really see what is the flavor of the day and whether your particular profile is among the most desirable at that moment in time.
Thank you so much, Janthomas, and we will definitely give all these details and these places where to go and be connected to the roster. And to close this interview, I would like to ask two more personal questions. The first one is, I mean, your career, almost a big part of it is 25 years in the development sector, in the crisis sector, and with UNDP. I'm wondering, have you ever dreamt or envisaged at some stage to do something else?
Well, definitely. I mean, but then I never do it because I really love what we do, what I do. I mean, I am from an early point in my career, I decided I need to be in some position where I have a direct feeling that I'm helping others, countries, people, regions. And in my world, in this UNDP, I have found that, sure, the KALU Institute and the humanitarian students would have the same dream, right? We don't like to do just anything in this world. We like to make a difference. So that is definitely what I like to do, and I don't think I will leave. But if there was something, I mean, I'm very fervent cook, and I mean, if you give me some restaurant somewhere with some vacancy, even cutting vegetables and stuff like that, which I have been doing, I would do that. Or also trading places with you. I mean, I love to make radio. I love to entertain. Of course, not in a light manner, but I love to create community over these what is called unpopular means these days. I like Zoom, to be honest. I don't mind. Of course, I would like to meet you in person, but for me, this is not any worse than meeting in person. So to create community, to have people chat, to make them feel home, despite the fact that we cannot see each other. I have a little bit of a talent for that, and that's also what I don't mind doing, and I'm doing it all the time on the side, like these webinars, setting up the training courses. We're also running training courses from our unit. So those are a few of my side hobbies, let's say.
Okay, thank you. And from all this experience that you have and this passion and this commitment that you've shared with us, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to our KALU students?
Well, I mean, I will talk to you. I will say something about being in a bureaucracy, which you invariably, as students, you will also end up in WFP or in UNHCR or in a big NGO. It's one tip I want to give you is that to be yourself. Even in a big organization, nobody's asking you to just obey and do whatever they tell you. That's not the point. I believe that big organizations can also be composed of very creative and very self-going, very outgoing people who can actually do what they want. Because if you're a good fit with an organization, you should be able to do what you want, right? Otherwise, the fit is not good. And that's how I felt in UNDP. People say, isn't it too small? Isn't it, how can you be fast? I can. I know how to do it, and I'm doing it. And that goes for everybody, I believe. WFP can even be faster, or WFP can be more gender sensitive. UNHCR can be more this and that, and you can be the part of that. And if you don't feel the fit, go somewhere else, because if the fit is there, you can actually be totally yourself in a big bureaucracy. That's how I feel like a fish in the water. In fact, there are limitations, but certainly I have the feeling I can make a difference. And if you don't feel that anymore, then it's really time to look for something else.
Wow. Thank you for this inspiration. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all this information about the roster. That is a beautiful opportunity to make a difference and to bring our difference and who we are to the world and to the crisis response. Thank you so much, Janthomas, for your knowledge sharing and for your time. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Cheers, Amelie.
Thank you. Thank you.